Hi, welcome back. Congratulations, you just finished decimals. Great job. Today we're going to start our next unit, which is squares and rectangles. This is chapter 11 in our Math in Focus book and workbooks. So workbook B is what you're going to want to pull out and open it up to page 73. We're going to work on 73 through 76. So let's get started. Many of these things you've already seen on Math Moves. So it'll be a little bit of review and a little bit of new. So let's get started. Our I-CANs for today are I can recognize squares and rectangles, and yes, I'm not losing my mind. There are more things you need to learn about them than just the basic shapes. I can determine what makes a shape a square or a rectangle. I can create squares and rectangles with a composite shape. The next page are some vocabulary words that you already have in Schoology. And here we go. You might want to take notes on your workbook pages. So get those opened up to page 73 in workbook B, Math in Focus. All right. The basic things that you need to know about squares and their properties. The first thing that you already know are the sides of a square are exactly the same length. So in this case, the length of the sides of a square are 15 inches each side. The one thing that I think is pretty cool and a good thing to note is that these are called tick marks, and you see them on each side here. And a tick mark tells you something. It tells you that this length is the same as any of the other tick marks that are there. So in a square, it would be 15 inches since all sides are the same. Now, the other thing that you have to know about a square is that the sides, the opposite sides of a square, so these two sets and these two sets are parallel. They run side by side without crossing. The other cool thing about squares that you probably already know is that every corner has a right angle, and you know a right angle measures 90 degrees. So there's what we have to know about squares. Beautiful square. And now we're moving on to rectangles and their properties. So what do we already know about rectangles? Well, let's take a peek. Rectangles also are a four-sided figure. We know that on rectangles that two sides are shorter length and two sides are of a longer length. The two shorter sides have the same length. So if you notice, there's one tick mark here and one tick mark here. That means these are both 12 centimeters. And then on this rectangle, you have two tick marks here, and it says 30 centimeters, and the opposite or parallel side is also 30 centimeters. That's where there's two. This is your first set of equivalent lines. This is your second set of equivalent lines. So it goes ahead and tells you about that there. Now, with a rectangle, we know that two sides are the same length and the opposite two are the same length. Each of the corners is a right angle, which is 90 degrees, and that's what makes a rectangle. So here we go again. You got a beautiful rectangle there. Now you know how Mrs. Hubert feels about the problem of the lesson. I love these things. They make you think. So how many rectangles are in this figure? Well, now I know what you're thinking. You're counting A, B, C, D, E. But what about the rest of the rectangles that are hiding in there? Have you ever thought about this rectangle? Oh, there's another one. Now use your head and think. Give you a couple of minutes to do that. I can see all your little hands raising up. You're all excited. And let's move ahead. Now you're going to test your knowledge. This is a table that asks you different questions about these three shapes. X, Y, and Z. So you notice that the first one says has 4 sides. Well, we know that each one of these has 4 sides. But my next question asks, all sides are of equivalent length. Well, I think it's only Z. Yes, Z has 4 sides that are of equivalent length. Guess what? We were right. Opposite sides are of equal length. Well, these guys don't look of equal length. Neither do these guys. Oh, I see that. What about these? I think we can mark both the rectangle and the square. Has exactly 1 pair of parallel sides. 1 pair. Well, these guys are parallel. Remember, parallel run means they run along next to each other, but they never cross. So those two would be parallel. These guys definitely are not. They would cross. Well, I see 1 set of parallel lines here, but then I see another set. So that's 2. 1 set of parallel lines here, 1 set here. That's 2 too. So I would say shape X is the only one that has 1 set of parallel lines. Well, now we already answered the question for number 5. 2 sets of parallel lines, that's easy. A square and a rectangle. Has exactly 4 right angles. Well, this is an acute angle. This guy is obtuse. These guys are right, but there's not 4 of them. This has 4 though, and so does this. So I guess, once again, a square and a rectangle. Man, we're doing well. Has exactly 2 right angles. Well, we already answered that one too. I bet you're thinking in your head, it's X, Mrs. Hubert, it's X. You're right. So, figure blank is a rectangle and a square. Well, now, I think I remember hearing this in that Google Meet that we were going to talk about, is a square a rectangle, is a rectangle a square? Well, let's think about this now. Figure, well, blank is a rectangle and a square. Well, I definitely know this is neither. I definitely know this is a rectangle, but it couldn't be a square because all the sides have to be equal. So I'm guessing that Z, that means that a square is a special type of rectangle. All right. So number 9, figure blank is a rectangle but not a square. Well, we know that's why. Boy, we're doing well. Figure blank is not a square or a rectangle. You're right. The answer is X. Good job, guys. Okay, on our next page, we are looking at which figure is a square. Well, I know what you're thinking. It's B, Mrs. Hubert, it's B. Well, yes, we all know that. But can you tell yourself why it's a square? Think about the angles. Think about the lengths of the sides. Think about how many sides. So if you've thought all those, check your answer. And the odds are you're probably right. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on this one. Which one is a rectangle? Well, I know. You're probably thinking C, right? And think about for a minute, stop the video and start again. Why is it a rectangle? Well, if you guessed these, you're right. Now we're moving on. So this is guided practice. We have to find the lengths of the unknown sides. Well, we know something about squares. I know what you're thinking. Mrs. Hubert, the sides of a square are all the same. So JK has to be 14 yards, and so does ML. I told you guys were smart cookies. You're right on the money. Now, we learned some things about a rectangle. So I know some things about a rectangle. I know that if PS is 5 feet, then the opposite side, the parallel side, QR, also has to be how many feet? Oh, you're right if you said 5. Good job. Mrs. Hubert can't talk again. PQ is 10 feet, so that means SR also has to be, you're right, 10 feet. You guys are doing so great. It's just like being back in the classroom. Well, not quite. I don't miss see your smiling faces. And I'm not telling anybody to remember to raise their hand when you guys get excited. All right. So here's what we have to do now. We have to look at this T shape. I don't know. I think it looks like a T. You guys might think it looks like something else, maybe a tack or something like that. I don't know. But we have to look at it and break it into possibly a rectangle and a square. So put on your thinking caps. What are you thinking? Well, if you looked at this figure and divided it right here, you were right. This section is a rectangle, and this section down here is a square. Why would I have to do this? It's going to make your life easier when we start area and perimeter, and you're trying to solve sides that they don't tell you how long they are. So let's move ahead. Let's look at this one. How would you divide this one? Well, there are a couple of ways, but I always say try to make the fewest number of parts. Well, for me, there's two ways. Like I said, they're going to end up either 3-part. Both of them would end up 3 parts. Some of you might go this way and have 2 little squares and a long rectangle. And I bet some of you are already thinking, oh, I know another way, Mrs. Hubred. Hang on one second while I get this thing to erase. The secret magic of videos is not fun. You could also go this way too, couldn't you? And have 2 rectangles and 1 square. You're right on the money. Well, so you're looking at the other side, and I think with the other side, I'd want to go right here. Then I have 1 long rectangle, and I have 1 square to help you out. Now on this one, you're going to identify the squares and the rectangles. Turn off your video and try it on your own. If you were thinking these, you were right on. On this page, they want you to tell the different sides that are missing. Go ahead and figure those out by turning off the video. If you guessed 5 on the squares on number 2, you were absolutely right. They're all 5 centimeters. How about this square? I'm guessing you're going to say 7. You're right. They are all 7 inches. Now this, number 4, is a rectangle. So I am guessing for JK, you have 12 meters. And for IJ, you're going to have 4 meters. How are you doing so far? I am guessing for NO, yes, it does spell no, you are going to say 13 miles. And for PO, which is PO, you're going to say 15 miles. How are we doing so far? I hope you're doing well. So this one, it's the same thing. We're not going to copy it, but you can tell me where you're going to draw it. So think in your head, where am I going to cut these apart to make the most sense so I can turn them into smaller squares and rectangles? Oh, were you thinking there? You could have went the other way too, but I think this turns it into, they're asking us for a square and a rectangle. This gives us a square, this gives us a rectangle. The other way, it would give us 2 rectangles. So there you go for that one, magically into a square and a rectangle. Now it's your turn to show me what you know. Go ahead and go into your Math in Focus Workbook B, complete pages 73 through 76, take some pictures and send them to me. So much easier than doing them on Google Slides. Take care, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.